Okay, great. So my name is Jennifer Title. I'm the Assistant Dean at the University of Iowa Graduate College, helping graduate students find out more about career success and external fellowships. I'm joined tonight by Dr. Angela Keyser, one of our PhDs from the University of Iowa, who now is an assistant professor at Allegheny College in Pennsylvania. Welcome, Angela.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. We're excited to have you. So the questions that we have for you tonight are mostly focused on your experience, your day-to-day experience at Allegheny, as well as your sort of preparation during graduate school and your experiences on the job search, interviewing, negotiating, all of those bits and pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and get things started. Now, we might also have graduate students joining in and asking some questions or asking questions via Twitter. I want to remind people that you can ask questions of Angela with the hashtag UIOpenDoors on Twitter, or if you have a Gmail account, you can send the questions directly live to the Hangout. So Angela, to get us started, will you tell us a little bit about your experience preparing for this, for the work you're doing now, preparing in graduate school?
Yeah, well, most of the time when I was a graduate student, I really was focused on my dissertation and my classes and my teaching. And I really didn't think about the job market until I had maybe 2 chapters of my dissertation written. And that's one thing I wish I would have changed. If I could change anything about my graduate experience, I would have thought about career options earlier. But when I did begin thinking about the job market, one thing that I did was that I prepared myself not only for the academic job market, but I also looked into other careers outside of academia, such as consulting work. There are firms that hire social science PhDs to consult and to use as analysts for various issues. I also looked into exploring careers in grant writing and reviewing fellowships and grants. And so I really tried to look at different areas, different possibilities, instead of only following one possible career path.
Was your #1 choice always a 4-year liberal arts institution, sort of like where you're working now? Was that the top?
I always enjoyed teaching during my time at the University of Iowa. And I knew in my heart that that's where my passion lay. And so I really, really hoped and prayed that an opportunity would come up where I would be able to teach at a liberal arts college. But I also knew the realities of the job market. And so I wanted to make sure that regardless of how my academic applications turned out, whether I was successful or not, that I had other career options lined up.
So when did you actually, and in your process, so I know you were probably working on your dissertation. I know you taught a lot as a graduate student. Did you teach throughout graduate school? Were you teaching?
Yes, yes, I did. Yes, both in the history department and in the rhetoric department.
Okay. So in that preparation, as you were getting ready, it kind of, when in that process did you start the actual, you said you kind of got into things late, but when did you start the actual hardcore job search process?
Yeah, I started it when I had about 2 chapters written in my dissertation. And so I started it before the completion of my dissertation. So I was on the job market for 2 years before I had my PhD, and then 1 year after I had my PhD. And to be very honest with you, I'm really, really happy that it worked out that way because I was able to get my feet wet. I was able to work on my job materials for 3 years and really hone my cover letter and my CV and interviews and feel more comfortable with academic interviews. So I spent a total of about 3 years on the academic job market.
So will you tell us a little bit more about the process of honing your materials? And as you said, you kind of got a little bit better as you went along at the interview process, or got more comfortable with the interview process. Tell us a little bit more about how you did that. Did you look at examples? Did you talk to colleagues? Did you work with faculty?
Yes.
What was your process like?
All of the above. I really tried to make the process more of a group community type of process instead of working on my own. So for example, for CVs and cover letters, I would contact colleagues that had jobs and ask to see examples of their job materials. There were other graduate students in the history department that I worked with, and we would actually have a working group that met every week or every 2 weeks to talk about job materials. When I was offered interviews or campus visits, I always consulted with professors in the history department. I always engaged in practice interviews, practice job talks, which was very unnerving, but I'm really glad that I did that. So it was really trying to tap in to all of the knowledge and expertise of people at the University of Iowa and having no shame in doing that. It worked, yeah.
So was there anything about the whole process that surprised you? Something that was unexpected?
So you always hear that the academic job market is awful, and it is. It's very competitive. And I knew that intellectually, but when I actually engaged in sending out materials and waiting for interview requests and going on campus visits, it really struck me how selective this process is. And let me just say, I think that what surprised me the most was being on the other side of things. Okay, so let me explain. So when I was on the job market, you know, I did my best. I sent out job materials, did my best in interviews. But my first semester here at Allegheny, I was a part of a committee, a job search committee looking for new faculty. And in my experience with that committee, I realized sometimes, you know, how lucky applicants are to get interviews. I mean, the number of applicants that submitted just wonderful credentials and wonderful writing samples. I mean, there were dozens and dozens of these, and to winnow it down, you know, to the lucky 12 who got interviews. I mean, it made me feel very, very fortunate. So yeah, so that was surprising, actually seeing how competitive things really are today in the academic market.
So from that side, following that path for a moment, what stood out to you about the applications that you really liked? I mean, it sounds like a lot of stellar applications came to you, but what kinds of qualities kind of caught your attention? Yeah.
I'd say applications that really reflected research on the institution itself. There were applications that I saw that you could tell that the person had no idea what Allegheny College was, our mission, that we were a teaching college, for instance. And just, I think, applications that reflected the applicant's teaching abilities and teaching experience. And again, that goes into research of the institution. Yeah, but it was, I mean, again, just many, many, many wonderfully put together applications. It was stunning, actually. I wish we could have hired 50 people instead of one. But.
So can you speak a little bit more to that distinction that you just made, understanding, say, Allegheny College, or understanding what a teaching college is as opposed to another kind of institution?
Yeah, and this is something that I really did not understand until I started working at Allegheny College. When I was on the job market, I had always thought because of what others around me said, that, oh, you know, if you're really successful and you do good work and write a brilliant dissertation, obviously you're going to get a job at a research one institution. There's a hierarchy. And then teaching colleges are lower than that. And then beyond that, you know, there's community colleges and it goes downhill. And what I was really surprised by was just the nature of my work at a teaching college. I work on my own research. I have not given that up. And there are support systems in place for faculty members to focus on research. Now, yes, I have a 3-3 teaching load, 3 courses each semester. And so the focus is on teaching. And I've had wonderful conversations with faculty members about teaching and different tactics to use in the classroom. But it's still, the research component is still there. It's not an either or. If you decide to teach at a small liberal arts college, you don't necessarily give up your intellectual curiosity and your motivation to do your own research, that's valued as well.
Thank you. So we had talked just a few minutes before, and you were mentioning sort of the relationship that another difference is the relationships that you have with colleagues across disciplines. Mm-hmm. So could you talk a little bit about sort of your relationships with colleagues at Allegheny, your relationship with colleagues outside of the history department, and how you see that as a little bit different than perhaps how they worked at an R1?
Well, I have to say, one of the things that I really love about Allegheny College is that everyone knows everyone else, which was very shocking to me when I first came here. I mean, librarians know everybody. I don't even have to take out my library card now. They just know who I am and check out books for me. When we have faculty meetings, all the faculty on campus meet in one room, one auditorium room, and have votes. And I actually really, really like that. And as you said, it's not divided by discipline, that faculty members are friendly with and are friends with other faculty members across disciplines. So it's a very personalized experience. Yes, you're not anonymous at a small liberal arts college. Everyone knows you.
So let's go back for just a moment and talk a little bit more about the process of actually getting into the position where you work. So I know this is where a lot of graduate students have questions. So we talked a little bit about how you developed your materials, but can you give us some insights about the interview process? Did you do any interviews by phone or interviews by Skype? Any hints or tips on campus interviews?
Yeah, so all of the above. I did it all. So I think the most difficult form of interview is over the phone. And I only did maybe 2 or 3 interviews over the phone. And it's really hard because you can't see the person to pick up signals of when you should stop talking, if you should talk more. Very difficult. But I have engaged in Skype interviews, which I think are great. I mean, the only issues are I've always tried to make sure, as your background is, mine is not, but to have a very intellectual background with books, make sure you look very professional. And that's always gone well. I always have my phone beside me in case Skype gives out and you have to actually talk to the interviewers. Yeah, I would say that the most important thing that I learned about interviews is that you are talking to future colleagues. You are not talking to individuals who you should address as Professor so-and-so, as if you're a student. And when I first started interviewing, that's what I would do. Because here I am, this graduate student, and I'm talking to the seasoned professor in an interview, and I want to show respect. So Professor so-and-so, hello, how are you? And as my interview experience increased, I really tried to look at the whole experience as a wonderful opportunity to talk to fellow colleagues about history and teaching. And I think that really helped me with my interviews.
So do you think it was time that gave you that level of comfort or something else? What allowed you psychologically, what allowed you to feel that that level of that was a conversation with colleagues instead of that kind of nervous job seeker feeling that we've all felt?
I think it was time, but I also think that I had reached a point where I had just received my PhD, going out on the job market, and I thought to myself, you know what? I really believed that if this did not work out, I had other options in mind and other paths that I wanted to pursue. And even so much as I had applied to other jobs and received other job offers. And so I felt confident that, hey, look, here I am. I'm just going to be me, you know, and if you like me, that's wonderful. You know, I would really love to work with you. But if you don't, that's okay too. I could go, I was an attorney in a previous life. I could do something along, you know, in the legal realm. I was looking at consulting work. I could do that. And so I think diversifying my job search really gave me a confidence that I didn't have when my job search was very myopic and just focused on getting a tenure track position at a college.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So how, and this may be something that you've sort of answered here, but how do you feel like you sort of stayed healthy during the job search process?
Oh, wow.
How did you keep yourself in a good place?
Okay. One rule that I had is that I would limit accessing the job wiki. I don't know if you're familiar with the academic job wiki, but it's a site where they have job postings and where you'll see people on the job market make comments like, oh, guess what? I got an interview request today. Isn't that wonderful? And if you apply to that school and you didn't get an interview request, it can be really depressing. Or other comments. Oh, I heard through the grapevine, this is an inside hire. And so I would limit my access to the job wiki because it would just create more stress. And to be perfectly honest with you, once I had sent out my applications, I really tried to occupy myself with other things. You know, searching out maybe other career opportunities, trying to compartmentalize it as much as I could. So it wasn't constantly, I'd wake up every morning, oh, I wonder if I'm going to get an interview request today. Like I tried to avoid that.
So we just had a question pop up on the side from a student, and he asks, if you had a Skype interview coming up this Tuesday, to pick a random date, what specific kinds of questions would you prepare for? Or do you have some general advice on preparing for such an interview?
Yeah, there are some basic questions that I was always prepared to answer and talk about. And they related to my research and also my teaching. And so being able to very succinctly state what your research is, what the main point of your dissertation is to non-specialists who may be in your field but may not specialize in your topic is very, very important. But also talking about what classes you could possibly teach at the institution, doing research ahead of time, looking at the course catalog and figuring out, okay, you know, if I'm hired as a colonial Americanist, these are the classes that I'll probably need to teach. And so I always made sure that I could talk about possibly what books I would use in class, what strategies I would use as far as assignments or methods that I would use in the class to assist learning. So research and teaching are two big areas that I believe you should be very comfortable talking about. Now with that, I'll also say one mistake that I made when I first went out on the job market and started to have interviews, I would memorize my responses to questions. So if someone asked me, so Angela, tell us what your research is, I would literally have 3 sentences I memorized. That is no good. I mean, I would have people tell me afterwards, oh, it sounded really canned. It sounded really, formalized. And so being able to talk about your research in a way where you know the points that you want to cover, but it doesn't sound as if you're reading from a script, that this has all been predetermined, is very important.
Thank you. One other piece to dig into that for a second. How much energy did you spend on those questions of fit within a department? So say researching the potential colleagues and deciding how you should talk about your work in relation to their work. Was that a thing that you thought about much? Or, that's a concern that I hear from graduate students. How much should they worry about that? How much did that worry you? Your fit in the department before you got there?
Yeah, I think it's an important area to research, especially at smaller colleges where you may not have 3 or 4 people who have the same specialty. So I work in a history department, and there's one colonial Americanist, there's one 19th century Americanist, and there's one 20th century. And so you really want to make sure that you discuss your research in ways that fit gaps within the department, okay, that don't overlap with someone's existing research. But there's a part of that, you can do as much research as you want to on the course or on the university or college's website, but there are things that you may not know. There might be somebody in a department that's listed as teaching medieval history, but on the side teaches classes about violence in the 1960s or Israel-Palestinian conflicts. And, so I would say, yes, that's something that you should conduct research on, but there will be aspects of it that you won't be able to find out. So just do the best you can with that.
Great, thank you. Okay, so moving on a little bit to kind of your daily life. You said that you have a 3-3 load. Could you walk us through kind of what a glimpse of a day and maybe a glimpse of a week for you?
Yeah, so I teach every day, Monday through Friday. I teach 3 classes. So I have 2 classes, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and 1 class Tuesday, Thursday. Now, what's wonderful about Allegheny, and I assume other small private liberal arts colleges, is that my class size is relatively low. So the biggest class size that I'll ever have to teach is 18 students. There are some classes that are capped at 12 students. And at Iowa, I was used to grading 50, 60 papers maybe for 1 class. So that's a big change. But my typical day is, I usually get to school by 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I stay there, I teach, I meet with students, and prepare, for my classes coming up. And I usually leave by 4 o'clock, 4:30 every day. So it's really, I think with small liberal arts colleges, there's an expectation that you have contact with students, much more contact than perhaps is expected at the University of Iowa. So at minimum, I have 6 office hours every week. And also there will be times when students might just come to my office as well. Now there are times that I block out for my own work, but I think that's a really big component of the college that I work with, is having really personal relationships and interactions with students. Yeah, so that's a big part of it as well. But yeah, but I rarely, unless I have a big grading, a big assignment due and I really need to get grades in, maybe I'll bring work home in that instance, but usually it's a 9 to 5, 9 to 4 type of job every day.
Okay. How do you integrate writing into that into that day? Does writing become part of your 9 to 5, or for you is writing something for at home or on the weekends?
Yeah, so writing for me, and staying connected with my research, I actually schedule it in a little bit every week. The summers here are devoted, to your research. So that's when I really focus on research. But I really try to at least, and I know I'd like to do it every day, but at least once a week, I try to revisit my research. Again, try to stay current with conferences, apply for panels. I'm working on an article right now. But yeah, but I have to schedule that in as if it was a doctor's appointment, and nothing and no one can violate that time. So I've learned that the hard way. Yes.
Okay, so I know that you're a parent, and I told you that I'd bring this up. You're a fairly new parent of a little one who's about a year old.
Mhm.
Would you mind sharing with us a little bit about your experience being, starting off at a small liberal arts college, having a young child, and kind of how you balance those things in your life?
Yes, it's very difficult. I am not going to sugarcoat it at all. It is very difficult. um, I have a partner who is amazingly supportive, who is also an academic. And if I didn't have a supportive partner, I really don't know what I would do. I really don't. I think being a parent and engaging in this new career of being a tenure track professor is really, really difficult, especially when children get sick, and you might have to cancel a class or two classes and balance everything. I think for us, it's both my partner and I, because I really feel that we're a team. I feel disingenuous if I just talked about myself as a mother and how I handle things. We're really a team. It's a lot of compromise and scheduling and really trying to keep my academic work at school. My office is on campus. And that is where I do my work. And when I come home, I'm with my daughter. And so that's how I've tried and we've tried to sort of keep those components of our life healthy, yet separate. Yeah.
So do you mind if I ask, your husband is he was working on his dissertation
Yes.
during your first year. So that's also a balancing act, but that's a fairly common balancing act for the graduate students that we work with. How did you as a couple balance sort of his need to be doing a lot of intense writing, your new career? Other than, obviously that's stressful for everybody, but do you have any tips or techniques that worked for the two of you? As you were getting through this?
Again, very difficult, especially with a little baby involved as well. I just, sometimes it's really hard in that situation because, here I am, new professor. I'm really focused on, trying to make a good impression, trying to illustrate to my colleagues, I'm a hard worker and I really want to be here, and, trying to focus on that and me. And sometimes I would get lost in that, sort of like, this is my track and I have to work, and not recognize, oh, well, my partner, he's going through a lot too, and I need to be supportive of that. So I think part of it is just recognizing and appreciating what the other person is going through. It's really difficult if you have a partner that is also an academic and trying to find jobs together and trying to make that work. What I think they call it, the two-body problem, is the name for this that people bandy about. That can be really difficult because we both worked really, really hard to have our careers, and we both want to be tenure track professors. My partner is teaching at Allegheny College. He is not on a tenure track level. And so we're, I don't know, he's looking for other possibilities, maybe around this, area. But I think, yes, taking deep breaths, patience, and just, appreciating the other person and what they're going through, because it can be very easy, just to be focused on your career and your success and, trying to be, a parent and, juggle everything. And yeah, to take that into account as well.
Thank you. So moving on a little bit towards thinking about your future, thinking about, I guess, the graduate students that you might give advice to that are trying to follow your path.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your big thoughts, your big sort of takeaways about students that say are in the middle of their graduate work, for example, right now, and are wanting to follow a path like yours? What would you advise them to do right now?
Yeah. Okay. Well, number one, I would say if you've already begun, your dissertation work, you've started writing your dissertation, I would, and I know people have different views on this, I would go ahead and get your feet wet and go out into the job market, because you never know. At worst, you're going to develop your job materials and get great experience, and you never know. You might get a job offer. I've had colleagues who had, believe it or not, one chapter of their dissertation written, and received tenure-track job offers. So I'd say it's never too early to start looking at available jobs, and putting applications out. But I'd also say, and I know I'm repeating myself a bit, but I'd also say look at other options as well. There's not one road to happiness. I'm convinced of this. And so really give yourself credit, for the skills that you have, for the knowledge that you've gained through, a PhD program, and explore different options. If you haven't already, join Versatile PhD, join communities where there are job postings all of the time for jobs that aren't in academia. I still have an account, and I had one for many years with usajobs.gov, to look at federal jobs in my area, and you would be amazed at all of the different fields that are applicable, to this website for finding jobs in the federal government. But just allowing yourself many different options, I'd say. And whatever you do, don't think that your ultimate career success and happiness depends on one career path or getting a certain job. One, that's really stress inducing. And two, it's simply not true. It really, really is not. So have faith in yourself, be confident, and explore many different paths.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. So I guess my last sort of question related is, in thinking about the future and thinking about that gloom and doom academic job market that we know is out there, and that we talked about a little bit, sort of where do you see yourself, kind of, and where do you see sort of the future, and not that there's a crystal ball here, but where do you see the future of jobs like the one you're working right now?
Oh boy, that's really hard. For me, I'll speak to that on both an individual level and then a more global level. On an individual level, I really have to say, and I really want to emphasize this, I really feel so fortunate to work at a small private liberal arts college. I will go on record as saying that I don't think I would be happy at a research institution. I really don't. Allegheny is really, I think, it suits my personality. It suits my intellectual curiosity and my love for teaching. So for me personally, boy, fingers crossed. I hope I can stay here as long as possible. Maybe we should do a follow-up, 5-7 years from now. I can, I hope. But as far as the future for positions, like this, I really don't, I mean, I'm hopeful that, you know, that the market will somehow improve in some way, that there will be more value placed on college education and the value of academics in society at large. It's very depressing right now at this point in time. It really is. But what I can say is that when I was exploring various job options, there were other ways that I could use my love for teaching and research in other professions. So I don't know. I mean, I really hope, fingers crossed, that there are plenty of jobs, you know, that maybe 2 years from now, everyone that's listening to us right now has 5 job offers and they have to really think, oh, which offer should I take? I don't know. I don't think that, I don't know if that's going to happen, if that's realistic. I hope it does happen, but I don't know if that's going to happen, but I don't know. What I do hope is that more and more graduate students realize that working at a teaching college can be very, very rewarding and very satisfying intellectually. So yes, no crystal ball. I can't make any predictions. I read stories all the time of doom and gloom, and I'm hoping that that's not the case for too much longer and that the market rights itself. But yeah, but it's merely hopes.
Well, that's all of the main questions that I have for you, Angela. Do you have any other things that you want to share? You've shared so many good bits and pieces of advice with students. Any other things that you want to share with them? I know you mentioned something about getting in touch potentially with other faculty.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to say that anybody, feel free to contact me if you have any questions or if I can be of any help. I talk to other faculty members at Allegheny College, and they are more than willing to talk to you and tell you about their experiences as well. And so if you happen to be in a field that's not history, that's a field that I'm in, and you'd rather talk to a faculty member that's in chemistry or physics or psychology, please feel free to get in contact with me. And I'd be very, very happy to get you in touch with another faculty member for more specific questions related to your discipline.
Well, thank you again so much for joining us. It's wonderful to see you. I so appreciate you offering your expertise and your time with everyone tonight. Wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and persevere. And as crazy as it sounds, have fun with this. You know, this is, you know, your career. And so just try to make it as enjoyable as possible. I know that sounds really crazy, but talk about what you love, what you're passionate about. Let that infuse your job materials, you know, really display yourself. And I think success will follow.
Wonderful advice. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to close this down. Have a good night, Angela. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.